The morning sun cast long shadows across Rodeo Drive as Patricia slowly made her way down the famous shopping street. At 73 years old, she moved carefully with her wooden walking cane, taking her time to admire the beautiful window displays. Her silver hair was neatly styled, and though her clothes were simple, they were well made and elegant in their own quiet way. Patricia stopped in front of Goldstone Luxury Jewelers, one of the most expensive jewelry stores in Beverly Hills. The window display sparkled with diamonds that caught the morning light like tiny stars. She had been planning this visit for weeks, ever since her son had quietly mentioned he was thinking about proposing to his longtime girlfriend. Patricia wanted to do something special, something that would show how much she already loved her future daughter-in-law. The heavy glass door chimed softly as Patricia entered the store. The interior was even more impressive than the window display. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and glass cases lined the walls, each one filled with precious gems and jewelry that most people could only dream of owning. The marble floors were so polished they reflected the lights above like a mirror. Behind the main counter stood Trevor, a 29-year-old sales associate who had been working at Goldstone for 3 years. He took pride in his ability to spot serious customers the moment they walked through the door. Trevor had learned to read people quickly, their clothes, their shoes, their watches, even the way they carried themselves. In his mind, this skill had made him one of the top salespeople in the store. When Trevor looked up and saw Patricia entering, his expression immediately changed. He saw an elderly woman with a cane, wearing a simple blue cardigan and comfortable walking shoes. Her handbag was plain leather, and she wore no visible jewelry except for a modest wedding ring. In Trevor's experience, people like this usually fell into one of two categories. They were either browsing with no intention to buy, or worse, they might be potential shoplifters looking for an opportunity. Patricia made her way slowly toward the engagement ring display, her eyes bright with excitement as she looked at the beautiful pieces. She had never owned anything particularly fancy herself, but she had saved money carefully over the years. Her late husband had left her well provided for, and she had been living modestly, saving for something meaningful like this. Trevor watched her approach the most expensive section of the store and decided he needed to act quickly. He straightened his tie and walked over with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Good morning, ma'am," Trevor said, his tone polite but clearly condescending. "Are you looking for anything in particular today?" Patricia smiled warmly at him. "Good morning, young man. I'm looking for something very special for my son. He's planning to propose soon, and I wanted to find a beautiful piece for his girlfriend." Trevor's smile became even more forced. He glanced at the engagement rings Patricia was admiring, each one priced between $50,000 and $200,000. "I see," he said slowly. "Well, these particular pieces are quite substantial in terms of investment. Perhaps I could show you some of our other lovely options that might be more suitable?" Patricia looked confused. "Suitable? I'm not sure I understand." Trevor gestured toward a smaller display case in the corner of the store. "We have some beautiful rings over there that are much more reasonably priced. I think you might find something perfect in that collection." Patricia followed his gesture and saw the case he was pointing to. Even from a distance, she could tell the pieces there were much simpler and smaller than what she had been looking. Thank you for the suggestion," she said politely, "but I was really hoping to find something from this collection. My son's girlfriend has such elegant taste, and I think one of these would be perfect." Trevor's patience was already wearing thin. "Ma'am, I appreciate your interest, but I have to be honest with you. These rings start at around $50,000. The one you were looking at there." He pointed to a stunning vintage-style ring. "That one is actually priced at $120,000. Patricia nodded calmly. "Yes, I saw the price tag. It's beautiful, isn't it? The craftsmanship is extraordinary." Trevor stared at her for a moment, unsure if she truly understood what she was saying. "Ma'am, did you hear me correctly? That ring costs $120,000. That's more than what many people make in 2 years." "I understand," Patricia replied, her voice still gentle but with a slight edge creeping in. "I may be old, but my hearing is just fine." Other customers in the store were beginning to notice the conversation. A well-dressed couple browsing nearby. Earrings kept glancing over, and a woman trying on bracelets had stopped what she was doing to listen. Trevor realized he needed to be more direct. "Look, ma'am, I don't want you to waste your time here. These pieces require serious financial consideration. We typically require our customers to provide proof of their ability to make such a substantial purchase before we even remove items." From the display case. Patricia's cheeks flushed slightly, but she maintained her composure. "Young man, I came here in good faith, hoping to make a purchase for my family. I don't believe I've done anything to suggest I'm not a serious customer." "It's nothing personal," Trevor said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "It's just store policy. We have to protect our inventory. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the department stores in the mall. They have some very nice jewelry there that might be more in your price range." The words hung in the air, like a challenge. The other customers were now openly staring, and Patricia felt the heat of embarrassment rising in her chest. She had never been treated this way in her entire life. Even during the difficult years when she and her husband were just starting out and had very little money, shopkeepers had always treated her with basic respect. "I see," Patricia said quietly. "And what exactly about me suggests that I cannot afford to shop here?" Trevor glanced around nervously, realizing that the conversation was attracting more attention than he wanted. "Ma'am, it's just that, well, we serve a very specific clientele here. Our customers typically arrive in luxury vehicles with personal shoppers or assistants. They're usually wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry themselves. It's just the nature of our business." Patricia looked down at her simple outfit and then back at Trevor. "So because I chose to dress comfortably and came here alone, you've decided I'm not worthy of your service?" "I'm just trying to save you from any embarrassment," Trevor said, his voice getting defensive. "These prices can be quite shocking for people who aren't used to this level of luxury shopping." By now, the store manager, Helen, had noticed the commotion and was making her way over. She had trained Trevor herself and generally trusted his judgment about customers. If he was having issues with someone, she assumed they were probably not a serious buyer. "Is everything all right here?" Helen asked, her tone professional but clearly supporting Trevor. "This lady is interested in looking at some of our premium engagement rings," Trevor explained. "But I was just explaining our store policies about high-value items." Helen looked at Patricia and made the same quick assessment Trevor had made. "I see. Ma'am, our premium collection does require a consultation process. If you're seriously interested in making a purchase of this magnitude, we'll need to verify your financial capacity first. It's nothing personal, just standard procedure for items in this price range." Patricia felt as though she had stepped into some kind of alternate reality, where being elderly and modestly dressed was somehow a crime. "Standard procedure?" she repeated. "Do you ask all your customers to prove they can afford to shop here before you'll help them?" "Only when necessary," Helen replied smoothly. "We find it helps avoid any awkward situations later on." Patricia realized that nothing she could say would change their minds. These people had looked at her and decided she didn't belong here, and they were determined to make that clear. She straightened her shoulders and looked both Trevor and Helen directly in the eye. "I understand completely," she said with quiet dignity. "You've made your position very clear. I won't waste any more of your valuable time." As Patricia turned to leave, Trevor couldn't resist one final comment. "Ma'am, if you'd like, we could put one of these pieces on hold for you while you consider your options?" The sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable, and several customers gasped softly at his rudeness. Patricia stopped and turned back to face him one last time, her expression calm but her eyes flashing with hurt and anger. "Young man," she said softly, "you have just lost a sale that would have been the largest commission of your career. More importantly, you've lost something much more valuable than money. You've lost your dignity." With that, Patricia walked out of Goldstone Luxury Jewelers, leaving behind a store full of customers who had witnessed one of the most shameful displays of customer service any of them had ever seen. Patricia didn't sleep well that night. The encounter at Goldstone Luxury Jewelers kept replaying in her mind, each memory bringing back the sting of embarrassment she had felt. but she was determined not to let one rude salesperson ruin her plans. Her son meant everything to her, and she wanted to do something special for his upcoming proposal. The next morning, she decided to give the store one more chance, hoping that perhaps she had simply caught them on a bad day. This time, Patricia dressed more carefully. She wore her best navy blue dress, the one she usually saved for special occasions, along with her pearl earrings and the gold watch her late husband had given her for their 40th wedding anniversary. She even called a taxi instead of taking the bus, thinking that perhaps arriving in a cab might change their perception of her. When Patricia walked into Goldstone Luxury Jewelers for the second time, she noticed that Trevor was busy with another customer. Instead, she was approached by a younger woman named Ashley, who appeared to be in her mid-20s. Ashley had perfectly styled blonde hair and wore an expensive-looking black dress with designer shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Good morning," Ashley said with a bright smile. "Welcome to Goldstone. How can I help you today?" Patricia felt a wave of relief. Perhaps yesterday had just been an unfortunate misunderstanding. "Good morning, dear. I was here yesterday, looking at engagement rings, and I was hoping to take another look at your collection." Ashley's smile remained in place, but Patricia noticed her eyes quickly scanning her outfit from head to toe. "Of course. What price range were you thinking about?" "I was particularly interested in a vintage-style ring in your premium collection," Patricia said. "It was in the main display case, and I believe it was priced around $120,000. Ashley's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, I see. That's quite a significant piece. May I ask who this would be for?" "It's for my son's girlfriend. He's planning to propose soon, and I wanted to surprise them both with something beautiful." Ashley nodded slowly, but Patricia could sense the same skepticism she had encountered with Trevor the day before. "That's very generous of you. That particular ring is actually $125,000. It's a genuine vintage piece from the 1920s, with a 3-carat center diamond and smaller diamonds around the band." "It sounds perfect," Patricia said eagerly. "Could I see it up close?" Ashley hesitated for a moment. "Well, for pieces in that price range, we do have certain protocols we need to follow. Would you mind if I ask a few questions first?" Patricia's heart sank. Here it was happening again. "What kind of questions?" "Well, purchases of this magnitude require some verification of financial capacity. It's nothing personal, just store policy. Could you tell me what type of payment you were planning to use?" "I was planning to pay with my credit card," Patricia replied, her voice becoming quieter. "Which credit card company?" Ashley asked. "And what's your credit limit?" Patricia felt her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I don't think that's really your business, young lady." By now, Trevor had finished with his customer and had wandered over to join the conversation. When he saw Patricia, his expression immediately changed. "Oh, you're back," he said, not bothering to hide his surprise. "I thought we clarified things yesterday." "I came back hoping for better service," Patricia said firmly. Trevor looked at Ashley and shook his head slightly. "This lady was here yesterday asking about the same ring. I already explained our policies to her." Ashley's demeanor shifted completely. The friendly smile disappeared, replaced by the same condescending attitude Patricia had experienced the day before. "I see. Well, ma'am, if Trevor already spoke with you about our requirements, then you understand that we need to verify your ability to make such a substantial purchase." "And how exactly do you verify that?" Patricia asked. "We need to see your credit cards, bank statements showing sufficient funds, or a letter from your financial advisor confirming your liquid assets," Ashley explained, as if she was talking to a child. Patricia couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Do you ask every customer to provide their financial records before you'll show them jewelry?" Trevor laughed out loud. "Ma'am, our regular customers don't need to provide that kind of documentation because we already know them. They're celebrities. Business owners or people who've been shopping here for years. When someone we don't recognize comes in asking to see $100,000 rings." He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Other customers in the store were starting to notice the conversation again. A man in an expensive suit stopped browsing and turned to watch. A young couple looking at watches exchanged concerned glances. The atmosphere in the store was becoming tense and uncomfortable. Helen, the store manager, emerged from her office, apparently drawn by the raised voices. When she saw Patricia, her expression hardened. "Is there a problem here?" "This customer is back asking about the vintage engagement ring again," Trevor explained. "She still doesn't want to provide the necessary documentation for a purchase of that size." Helen nodded as if this confirmed her worst suspicions. "Ma'am, I thought we made our policies clear yesterday. For high-value items, we require financial pre-qualification. It's not negotiable." "But I haven't even been allowed to look at the ring properly," Patricia protested. "How can I decide if I want to buy it if you won't let me see it?" "Because," Helen said with exaggerated patience, "we can't risk having expensive items handled by people who aren't serious buyers. These pieces are fragile and valuable. We can't have them damaged by someone who's just curious." The word "just" curious hit Patricia like a slap. She realized that no matter what she said or did, these people had made up their minds about her. In their eyes, she was nothing more than an elderly woman wasting their time. "Fine," Patricia said, her voice steady despite her hurt. "Let me ask you this. If I were to provide a bank statement showing that I have the money, would you then treat me with the same respect you show your other customers?" Trevor and Ashley exchanged a look. "Well," Trevor said slowly, "even if you could prove you have the money, we'd still need to verify that it's legitimate income. Sometimes elderly people fall victim to scams or inheritance fraud." Patricia stared at him in disbelief. "Are you suggesting that if I have money, I must have gotten it illegally?" "Not illegally," Ashley jumped in, "but elderly people are often targeted by financial predators. We just want to make sure you're not being taken advantage of by someone pushing you to make a large purchase." The condescension in Ashley's voice was overwhelming. Patricia realized they weren't just questioning her ability to pay. They were now questioning her mental capacity to make her own financial decisions. "So let me understand this correctly," Patricia said, her voice getting stronger. "You won't show me the ring because you don't think I can afford it. And even if I prove I can afford it, you won't trust that I'm mentally capable of deciding to buy it for myself?" Helen stepped forward, clearly wanting to end this conversation. "Ma'am, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're simply trying to protect both our merchandise and our customers. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable shopping somewhere that better suits your needs." The dismissal was clear and final. Patricia looked around the store at the other customers, all of whom were now openly staring at the scene. She saw pity in some of their faces, disapproval in others. A few people looked angry on her behalf, but no one spoke up to defend her. Patricia took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. "You know what? You're absolutely right. I would be more comfortable shopping somewhere else, somewhere that treats all customers with basic human dignity, regardless of their age or appearance." She turned to leave, but Trevor couldn't resist getting in one last dig. "Ma'am, before you go, would you like us to hold that ring for you? We could keep it aside for, say, 6 months while you save up for it." The sarcasm in his voice was so obvious that several customers gasped audibly. Even Ashley looked uncomfortable with how far Trevor had gone. Patricia stopped walking and turned back to face the 3 employees. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear, carrying the weight of someone who had lived through decades of experience and earned every bit of dignity she possessed. "Young man," she said, looking directly at Trevor, "someday you're going to learn that treating people with respect costs nothing, but losing it can cost you everything. I hope that lesson doesn't come too late for you." With that, Patricia walked out of Goldstone Luxury Jewelers for the second and final time, leaving behind a store full of people who had just witnessed something that would stay with them for a very long time. Patricia returned home that afternoon feeling defeated and hurt. She sat in her favorite armchair, the one by the window where she liked to read in the afternoons, and tried to make sense of what had happened. In all her 73 years, she had never been treated with such disrespect. She had raised her children to be kind to everyone, regardless of their background or appearance. And seeing such cruelty in the world left her feeling deeply sad. That evening, her son called as he did every few days to check on her. Patricia had always been close to her children, but her youngest son held a special place in her heart. He was kind, generous, and had somehow managed to stay humble despite his incredible success in Hollywood. When people recognized him on the street or in restaurants, he was always gracious and patient, never too busy to sign an autograph or take a photo with a fan. "Hi, Mom," came his familiar voice through the phone. "How was your day? You sound a little tired." Patricia hesitated. She didn't want to worry him with her troubles, especially when he had so much going on in his life. But something in his caring tone made her want to share what had happened. "Oh, it was fine, dear," she said, then paused. "Actually, I had a rather strange experience today. I went to that jewelry store on Rodeo Drive, the one I mentioned to you. I wanted to look at engagement rings for when you proposed to Diana." "That's so sweet of you, Mom. You know you don't need to do that, right? Diana and I will be perfectly happy with whatever we choose together." "I know, sweetheart. But I wanted to do something special. Diana has been so wonderful to our family, and I thought it would be nice to contribute something meaningful to your engagement." "So what happened at the store? You said it was a strange experience." Patricia took a deep breath and told him everything. She described Trevor's immediate dismissal of her, the way they had treated her like a potential criminal, and how they had questioned her mental capacity and suggested her money might not be legitimate. She told him about the public humiliation, the stares from other customers, and the sarcastic comments about saving up for the ring. As she spoke, Patricia could hear her son's breathing getting heavier on the other end of the line. She knew that tone. It was the same way he used to sound as a child when someone had been mean to one of his friends at school. "Mom," he said quietly when she finished, "I'm so sorry that happened to you. That's completely unacceptable." "It's all right, dear. I suppose some people just make assumptions. Maybe I should have dressed differently or arrived in a fancier car." "No, Mom. Don't you dare blame yourself for their behavior. The way you dress or how you arrive at a store has nothing to do with how you should be treated. Every person who walks into a business deserves basic respect and courtesy." Patricia felt tears welling up in her eyes, not from sadness but from gratitude for having raised such a compassionate son. "You're right, of course. I just can't understand why people would behave that way." "What was the name of the store again?" "Goldstone Luxury Jewelers. But please don't worry about it, sweetheart. I'll find somewhere else to shop." "Mom, I need you to promise me something. Don't go back there alone, okay? If you still want to look at rings, we'll go shopping together when I'm back in town next week." "That sounds lovely," Patricia said, feeling better already. "I'd like that very much." After they hung up, Patricia's son sat in his home office staring at his phone. The more he thought about what had happened to his mother, the angrier he became. Patricia had always been one of the kindest, most dignified people he knew. She had raised 4 children, mostly on her own after their father died young, working multiple jobs to keep the family together. She had never asked for special treatment or used her son's fame to get better service anywhere. In fact, she went out of her way to avoid mentioning his career, preferring to be treated just like any other customer. The next morning, he decided to call the store. He wanted to hear their side of the story, though he suspected it would only confirm what his mother had told him. He looked up the number for Goldstone Luxury Jewelers and dialed. "Good morning, Goldstone Luxury Jewelers," came a cheerful voice. "This is Ashley speaking. How may I help you?" "Good morning, I'd like to speak with your manager, please. May I ask what this is regarding?" "I'd like to discuss the treatment my mother received at your store yesterday." Ashley's voice became slightly defensive. Hold on just a moment, please." After a brief wait, Helen's voice came on the line. "This is Helen, the store manager. I understand you have a concern about your mother's visit yesterday?" "Yes, I do. My mother, Patricia, visited your store yesterday looking at engagement rings, and she was treated very poorly by your staff." Helen's tone became professional but guarded. "Sir, I was present during part of that interaction, and I can assure you that our staff followed proper protocol for high-value merchandise. We have policies in place to protect both our inventory and our customers." Your policies include publicly humiliating elderly customers and questioning their mental capacity? Sir, we never questioned anyone's mental capacity. We simply explained our verification procedures for expensive purchases. This is standard practice in luxury retail. Is it standard practice to follow customers around like they're criminals? To refuse to show them merchandise? To make sarcastic comments about them saving up money? Helen was quiet for a moment. Sir, may I ask who I'm speaking with? My name is Keanu Reeves, and the woman you humiliated yesterday is my mother. The silence on the other end of the line was so complete that Keanu wondered if the call had been disconnected. Finally, Helen's voice came back, much quieter than before. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that? Keanu Reeves, the woman your employees treated so poorly yesterday is my mother, Patricia. Keanu could hear Helen's sharp intake of breath followed by what sounded like her sitting down heavily in a chair. Mr. Reeves, we had no idea. That's exactly the point, Keanu said firmly. You had no idea who she was, so you decided she wasn't worth treating with basic human decency. My mother has never used my name or my career to get special treatment anywhere. She's always insisted on being treated just like any other customer. Well, yesterday she got exactly that, and it was disgraceful. Mr. Reeves, please let me apologize. If you had known what? That she was related to someone famous? That shouldn't matter. Every customer who walks into your store should be treated with the same respect, regardless of who they are or what they look like. Helen was scrambling now, realizing the magnitude of the situation. You're absolutely right, of course. Please, is there anything we can do to make this right? We'd be honored to have you and your mother come in for a private appointment. We could close the store just for you. That's not the point, Keanu said, his voice calm but firm. The point is that my mother and every other customer should receive excellent service every time they visit your store, not just when you find out they're connected to someone famous. Helen's mind was racing. She knew that Keanu Reeves was not just famous, but beloved by millions of people around the world for his kindness and down-to-earth personality. Stories about his generosity and thoughtfulness were legendary in Hollywood. If word got out about how his mother had been treated, Mr. Reeves, please, let us make this right. What can we do? Keanu was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Honestly, I'm not sure there's anything you can do at this point. The damage is done. My mother was publicly humiliated by your staff, and no amount of apologizing can take that back. We could offer her a significant discount or perhaps a complimentary piece. My mother doesn't want your charity. She wanted to make a purchase for her family, and she was treated like a criminal for having the audacity to walk into your store while elderly and modestly dressed. Helen was beginning to panic. Mr. Reeves, please, we're a small business. If this gets out, then maybe you should have thought about that before allowing your employees to treat customers so poorly. After Keanu hung up, Helen sat in her office, staring at the phone. She realized that in the span of one phone call, her store's reputation had potentially been destroyed. Word traveled fast in Hollywood, and Keanu Reeves was not just any celebrity. He was someone that other celebrities respected and admired. If he chose to share this story, it would spread through the entertainment industry like wildfire. She called Trevor and Ashley into her office immediately. When she told them who Patricia really was, their faces went white. Trevor, who had been so confident and sarcastic just the day before, suddenly looked like he might be sick. The three of them sat in stunned silence, realizing that their prejudice and poor judgment had not just cost them a sale, but potentially their entire business. The news of what happened at Goldstone Luxury Jewelers didn't stay contained for long. Within hours of Keanu's phone call to Helen, word began to spread through Hollywood's tight-knit community. It started when Keanu mentioned the incident to his close friend and fellow actor during lunch that same day. I can't believe they treated your mom like that, his friend said, shaking his head in disgust. Patricia is one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Remember when she made cookies for our entire film crew that time? Keanu smiled at the memory. She still asks about you every time we talk. That's just who she is. She treats everyone like family, and some jewelry store employees treated her like a criminal just because she's not flashy about money. That's disgusting. By evening, the story had been shared with several other actors, directors, and industry professionals. Hollywood, despite its size, often felt like a small town when it came to gossip and news. Everyone knew everyone, and stories traveled fast, especially stories about injustice or poor treatment of beloved figures. What made this story particularly powerful was that everyone who knew Patricia genuinely loved her. She had been a fixture at many Hollywood events over the years, not because she sought attention, but because she supported her son's career. Cast members and crew often spoke about how she would show up to film sets with homemade meals. How she remembered everyone's names and asked about their families, and how she never acted like she was better than anyone, despite her son's fame. 2 days after the phone call, a customer who had witnessed Patricia's treatment at the jewelry store posted about the incident on social media. The customer, a woman named Lisa who worked as a makeup artist in the film industry, didn't initially mention any names. She simply wrote about watching an elderly woman get humiliated at a luxury store for no reason other than her age and modest appearance. "I watched the most disgusting display of ageism and classism today," Lisa wrote. An elderly woman walked into a jewelry store wanting to buy an engagement ring for her son's girlfriend. The staff immediately decided she couldn't afford anything and treated her like garbage. They followed her around, questioned her mental capacity, and made sarcastic comments about her saving up money. I was too shocked to speak up in the moment, but I can't stop thinking about it. When did we become so cruel to our elders? The post struck a nerve. Within hours, it had been shared hundreds of times, with people commenting about their own experiences with retail discrimination and age bias. Many shared stories of elderly relatives being treated poorly in stores, restaurants, and other businesses simply because they didn't fit someone's idea of what a valuable customer should look like. Lisa's post caught the attention of a journalist who specialized in social justice issues. The journalist reached out to Lisa, asking for more details about the incident. During their conversation, Lisa mentioned that she worked in Hollywood and had recognized the elderly woman from industry events, though she didn't initially realize the full significance. "I kept thinking she looked familiar," Lisa told the journalist. "Then it hit me where I'd seen her before. She's Keanu Reeves' mother. I've seen her at premieres and rap parties over the years. She's always so kind to everyone." The journalist's eyes lit up. This wasn't just a story about retail discrimination anymore. This was a story about how one of Hollywood's most beloved actors' mother had been mistreated, and it was exactly the kind of human interest story that would resonate with readers. The Salwar article was published 3 days later with the headline, "Hollywood star's mother faces shocking discrimination at Beverly Hills jewelry store." The piece detailed Patricia's experience without sensationalizing it, focusing instead on the broader issues of ageism and the assumptions people make based on appearance. The story exploded across social media platforms. People were outraged, not just because Patricia was related to a famous actor, but because she represented every elderly person who had ever been dismissed or mistreated simply for not looking wealthy enough. The comments sections filled with personal stories from people who had witnessed similar discrimination or experienced it themselves. Meanwhile, at Goldstone Luxury Jewelers, Helen was watching her business fall apart in real time. The first sign of trouble came when several regular customers called to cancel appointments. Then, potential customers who had found the store through online searches began leaving negative reviews, referencing the viral story. "I'll never shop at a store that treats elderly customers this way," wrote one reviewer. "If they judge people so harshly based on appearance, I don't trust their character." Trevor and Ashley were both suspended pending a full investigation into the incident. Trevor, who had been so confident in his ability to read customers, now found himself at the center of a national conversation about prejudice in customer service. His friends and family had seen the story, and he was mortified by how his behavior had been portrayed. Ashley wasn't faring much better. Her social media accounts, which she had always used to showcase her glamorous lifestyle working at a luxury store, became targets for angry comments from people who had read about the incident. She ended up making all her profiles private and barely left her apartment for days. Helen tried desperately to control the damage. She issued a public apology, stating that the behavior described in the article did not reflect the store's values, and that they were taking immediate action to address the situation. But the apology felt hollow to many people, especially when it became clear that the discriminatory treatment wasn't an isolated incident. Other customers began coming forward with their own stories about poor treatment at Goldstone. An older gentleman shared how he had been ignored for 20 minutes because staff assumed he was waiting for someone else. A young woman described being dismissed because she was wearing casual clothes after coming from the gym. A man with a disability talked about how staff members spoke to his caregiver instead of directly to him when he inquired about watches. The pattern became clear. Goldstone Luxury Jewelers had a culture problem that went far beyond one employee's bad day. The story reached Keanu himself when reporters began calling his representatives for comment. True to his character, Keanu's response was measured and thoughtful. Through his publicist, he issued a brief statement. "My mother is a strong, dignified woman who has always taught our family to treat everyone with kindness and respect, regardless of their circumstances. While I'm disappointed by how she was treated, I hope this incident can serve as a reminder that every person deserves to be treated with basic human dignity. We don't expect special treatment because of who we are, but we do expect the same courtesy that should be extended to every customer." The statement was perfectly crafted to deflect attention from himself while reinforcing the broader message about treating people with respect. It also demonstrated exactly the kind of grace and wisdom that had made Keanu so beloved by fans around the world. Industry colleagues rallied around the family. Directors who had worked with Keanu shared their own positive experiences with Patricia. Co-stars posted pictures of her from film sets, showing her laughing with crew members and bringing food to everyone. The overall picture that emerged was of a woman who embodied kindness and humility, making her mistreatment even more shocking to observers. Local news stations picked up the story, interviewing retail experts about best practices for customer service and the unconscious biases that can affect how employees treat different types of customers. Business schools began using the incident as a case study in their courses about customer relations and corporate culture. For Trevor, the consequences were becoming very real. Other luxury retailers in the area had heard about the incident, and his reputation in the industry was essentially destroyed. Helen, facing the possibility of her business closing permanently, made the difficult decision to terminate Trevor's employment immediately. As the story continued to spread, it became clear that this wasn't just about one jewelry store anymore. It had become a catalyst for a much larger conversation about how society treats its elderly citizens and the assumptions we make about people based on their appearance. Patricia's dignity in the face of mistreatment had touched people around the world, and her story was inspiring others to speak up against discrimination wherever they encountered it. 3 weeks after the story went viral, Patricia was sitting in her garden reading when her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and visitors were rare these days since the media attention had made her somewhat cautious about going out. When she opened the door, she found a young man standing nervously on her porch, holding a large bouquet of flowers. It took her a moment to recognize Trevor. He looked different than he had in the jewelry store. Gone was the arrogant confidence, replaced by genuine remorse and humility. His expensive suit had been traded for simple jeans and a sweater, and his whole demeanor seemed smaller, more uncertain. "Mrs. Patricia," he said quietly, "I'm Trevor from Goldstone Jewelers. I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I was hoping you might give me just a few minutes to apologize properly." Patricia studied his face carefully. She had lived long enough to recognize genuine remorse when she saw it, and this young man clearly was carrying a heavy burden of regret. "Come in," she said simply. "Would you like some tea?" Trevor was surprised by her kindness. After the way he had treated her, he had expected anger or for her to slam the door in his face. "I don't want to impose on your time." "Nonsense, sit down." As Patricia prepared tea in her kitchen, Trevor looked around her modest but warm home. Family photos covered the mantelpiece and side tables, showing decades of birthdays, graduations, and holidays. The furniture was comfortable, rather than expensive, and everything spoke of a life filled with love rather than luxury. He realized how badly he had misjudged this woman. When Patricia returned with the tea, Trevor took a deep breath and began to speak. "Mrs. Patricia, I need you to know how deeply sorry I am for the way I treated you. There's no excuse for my behavior. I was rude, disrespectful, and completely out of line. I've been thinking about it every day since it happened, and I'm ashamed of the person I was in that store." Patricia listened quietly, letting him speak. "I lost my job, of course, and I deserve that. But more than that, I lost something much more important. I lost my self-respect. I was raised better than that. My grandmother would be horrified if she knew how I acted. She taught me to treat everyone with kindness, especially older people, who deserve our respect and care." Trevor's voice cracked slightly as he continued. "I want you to know that losing my job was the best thing that could have happened to me. It made me take a hard look at who I had become, and I didn't like what I saw. I had started believing that a person's worth was measured by their clothes or their car or their credit card limit. I was wrong about everything." Patricia sat down, her teacup, and looked at Trevor with gentle eyes. "What have you been doing since you left the store?" "I've been volunteering at a senior center," Trevor said. "I wanted to understand better what it feels like to be dismissed because of your age. I've been helping elderly people with their shopping, driving them to appointments, just spending time listening to their stories. I've learned more in the past 3 weeks than I learned in years working at that jewelry store." "And what have you learned?" Trevor thought for a moment. "I've learned that every person has a story worth hearing. I've met people who lived through wars, who built businesses from nothing, who raised families and made sacrifices I can't even imagine. I've met people who are brilliant and funny and wise, and I almost missed all of that because I was too busy judging them by their appearance." Patricia smiled for the first time since Trevor had arrived. "That's a valuable lesson, young man. Mrs. Patricia, I know I can't undo what I did to you, but I want you to know that I'm trying to become a better person because of what happened. I'm speaking at customer service training seminars now, telling my story as an example of how not to treat people. I want to make sure no other customer ever experiences what you went through." Patricia was quiet for a long moment, studying Trevor's face. Finally, she spoke. "Trevor, I forgive you." The words hit Trevor like a physical blow. He had hoped for forgiveness but hadn't dared to expect it. Tears welled up in his eyes. "You don't know what that means to me," he said. "Forgiveness isn't just for you," Patricia said gently. "It's for me too. Carrying anger and hurt only weighs down my own heart. You've clearly learned from your mistake, and that's what matters now." They talked for another hour, and when Trevor left, he carried with him not just Patricia's forgiveness but a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, the story had continued to inspire positive changes beyond just Trevor's personal transformation. Goldstone Luxury Jewelers, facing potential bankruptcy, had made dramatic changes to their policies and staff training. Helen had implemented mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, focusing specifically on unconscious bias and respectful customer service regardless of a customer's appearance or perceived wealth. The store also established the Patricia Taylor Customer Dignity Award, given annually to employees who demonstrated exceptional kindness and respect to all customers. Helen had reached out to Patricia personally to ask permission to use her name, and Patricia had graciously agreed, hoping it might prevent other customers from experiencing what she had gone through. Other jewelry stores and luxury retailers throughout Beverly Hills had taken notice of the incident and proactively reviewed their own customer service policies. Many implemented new training programs and hired consultants to help identify and eliminate discriminatory practices. The broader impact reached far beyond retail. Senior advocacy groups used Patricia's story to highlight the widespread problem of ageism in customer service. The story sparked conversations in families about how elderly relatives are treated in public, leading to greater awareness and more people speaking up when they witness discrimination. A month after the incident, Keanu surprised his mother with a special shopping trip. But instead of returning to Goldstone or another luxury store, he took her to a small, family-owned jewelry shop in downtown Los Angeles that had been recommended by a friend. The elderly owner, Richard, greeted them both warmly and spent over an hour showing Patricia different pieces, sharing the history and craftsmanship behind each one. Patricia finally found the perfect engagement ring for her future daughter-in-law, a vintage Art Deco piece that was even more beautiful than the one she had originally wanted at Goldstone. When Keanu's girlfriend Diana saw the ring, she was moved to tears not just by its beauty but by the love and thoughtfulness behind Patricia's gift. The proposal itself was perfect. Keanu chose a quiet evening at home, just the two of them in the garden where they had shared so many conversations over the years. When Diana saw the ring and learned about Patricia's role in choosing it, she insisted that Patricia be the first person they called with the news. 6 months later, at the engagement party, Patricia was surrounded by friends and family who had rallied around her during the difficult weeks following the jewelry store incident. The party was filled with people from all walks of life, Hollywood celebrities mixing easily with senior center volunteers, retired teachers, and longtime family friends. Trevor was there too, having stayed in touch with Patricia after their initial meeting. He had found new work as a customer service trainer for retail companies, and his presentations about unconscious bias and treating all customers with dignity had become highly sought after. He often spoke about how one elderly woman's grace in the face of mistreatment had changed not just his career, but his entire perspective on life. As Patricia watched her son and Diana dancing together, surrounded by people who truly understood the value of kindness and respect, she reflected on how something so painful had ultimately led to so much positive change. The incident at Goldstone had been hurtful and embarrassing, but it had also become a catalyst for important conversations about dignity, respect, and the way society treats its elderly citizens. Patricia had learned that sometimes the most powerful response to cruelty is simply to maintain your dignity and let others see the contrast between kindness and prejudice. Her quiet strength had inspired thousands of people to be more conscious of how they treat others, and that legacy meant more to her than any piece of jewelry ever could. The story of what happened at Goldstone Luxury Jewelers became more than just a tale of discrimination and consequences. It became a reminder that every person deserves to be treated with respect, that our assumptions about others are often wrong, and that even in the darkest moments, there's an opportunity for growth, forgiveness, and positive change.